from his birth, receivers of the inner and outer law, at once the agents of his Spirit's will and witnesses and executors of his fate.
Good morning. So we're reading in Book 4, the Book of Birth and Quest, and we've come to Canto 4, the Quest. I wanted to make a few general comments about the poem and this section before beginning. This book, Book 4, and the next Book 5, are a little bit of a interlude from kind of the heavier spiritual, philosophical things that were covered earlier in the poem and what is going to come later. So they're a little lighter. There's a lot of beautiful poetry, imagery in these two books. But one of the interesting things is that Sri Aurobindo doesn't kind of settle for just beautiful imagery, that he also brings in these spiritual aspects to it, raising these things to a higher level, to a more spiritual level. So earlier in the poem, like in book 1, we're given an introduction to the overall poem, the issue of Savitri's birth and what she has to overcome. And it begins deeply symbolic with the symbol of dawn, and we see various different meanings of that dawn, from the dawn of the day in which Satyavan must die to what seems to be the beginning of the universe, of the manifestation, but also of the dawning of the spiritual light in the world, a new age, and perhaps even in the individual, the dawning of spiritual light as the individual reaches a certain stage in their evolution. And we get the beginnings of Aswapati's yoga. We have the yoga of the king, one, and another canto on it. And in between, sandwiched in, is this secret knowledge in which Sri Aurobindo lays out, in a sense, a lot of his spiritual philosophy. And then in book 2, we get Aswapati's journey through all the inner planes of consciousness. And in book 3, the summit of that journey in the book of the Divine Mother, where he goes into the transcendent, into the supermind, meets the Divine Mother, and she agrees to incarnate on earth. So then we come to part 2, this book 4, the book of birth and quest, and Savitri's birth and growing up in the palace. So we saw in that canto, the first of the book, Canto 1, the birth and childhood of the flame, Sri Aurobindo begins with this beautiful description of the 6 seasons of India. And he takes us through beautiful imagery again. But at the same time, he describes something of the incarnation of the divine in Savitri, the birth of the avatar. So we get some kind of deeper significances in that canto as well. And then in the next canto, Canto 2, the growth of the flame, we see Savitri growing up. But at the same time, Sri Aurobindo gives us something of the flavor of the Vedic culture. So we see the deeper significances of the arts and crafts and architecture, and we see the sages giving their spiritual teachings. So again, there is a lot of beautiful imagery in there, but Sri Aurobindo brings it up to this higher level with these descriptions of the culture and the deeper spiritual significances of culture. And then last time we were reading in Canto 3, the call to the quest. And again, we get a lot of beautiful imagery. But at the same time, we get this deeper inspiration that comes to King Aswapati, this voice that speaks through him, and there's this kind of interlude in which the narrator comes forward and gives a kind of spiritual significance of human life in a general way. And now, in the quest, Savitri ventures out into the world to seek her mate, and we again find beautiful imagery of the Indian countryside as she goes through. But then we also get this other higher element in her journey in which she meets these various sages and saints and ascetics in her journey, bhaktis who unite with the divine through this fathomless love, others who, with their matted hair and covered with ash and deep asceticism, reach the one self of all, kind of this silence of absolute being. So Sri Aurobindo also gives us a flavor of the different types of spirituality that has been in India's ancient history, and gives us some examples of the adepts in each of these different fields. He talks of the king sages, kings and warriors who in their retirement go and seek for the divine in their later stages of their life. So that is the canto that we're going to read now. And we'll read through it one time, and then we'll go back. Oh, I should just mention briefly that the book that follows, Book 5, the Book of Love, again, is along this same kind of lines where we see the place in which Savitri meets Satyavan in the forest. And again, there's a lot of beautiful scenery. And then there is this encounter of love between the two. But then Sri Aurobindo also elevates this love to the peaks of what human love can be like. So again, he raises it to this spiritual level. Okay, and then following that in Book 6, we have the Book of Fate. And this becomes a deeply philosophical book explaining the issues of karma and rebirth and what happens to the soul. So again, we start entering into some deep philosophy before getting into Savitri's yoga and all of that. That continues, and her encounters with death. So this is a little bit of an interlude. It's a little bit lighter, but still very beautiful, and also having a great deal of interesting spiritual knowledge and teaching behind it. So we can begin. Would you like to read, sir?
I've forgotten my glasses.
Oh, okay. So we'll have Sudanya read.
Canto 4, The Quest. The world was opened before Savitri. At first, a strangeness of new brilliant scenes peopled her mind and kept her body's gaze. But as she moved across the changing earth, a deeper consciousness welled up in her. A citizen of many sins and crimes, each soil and country it had made its home. It took all clans and peoples for her own, till the whole destiny of mankind was hers. These unfamiliar places on her way were known and neighbors to a sense within. Landscapes recorded like a lost forgotten fields, cities and rivers and plains her visions claimed. Like slow recurring memories in front, the stars at night were her past brilliant friends. The winds murmured to her of ancient things, and she met nameless comrades loved by her once. All was a part of old forgotten selves, vaguely or with a flash of sudden hints. Her acts recalled a line of bygone power. Even her motion's purpose was not new. Travelers to a prefigured high event, she seemed to her remembering witness soul to trace again a journey often made.
Thank you. Naren.
A guidance turned the dumb revolving wheels, and in eager body of their speed, the dim-masked hooded godheads rode who move, assigned to man immutably from his birth, receivers of inner and outer law, at once the agents of his spirit's will, and witnesses and executors of his fate. Inexorably faithful to their task, they hold his nature's sequence in their guard, carrying the unbroken thread old lives have spun. Attendance on his destiny's measured walk, leading to joys he has won and pains he has called. Even in his casual steps they intervene. Nothing we think or do is void or vain. Each is an energy loosed and holds its course. The shadowy keepers of our deathless past have made our fate the child of our own acts, and from the furrows labored by our will, we reap the fruit of our forgotten deeds.
Thank you.
But since unseen the tree that bore this fruit, and we live in a present born from an unknown past, they seem but parts of a mechanic force to a mechanic mind tied by earth's laws. Yet are they instruments of a will supreme, watched by a still all-seeing eye above. A prescient architect of fate and chance, who builds our lives on unforeseen design, the meanings knows and consequence of each step, and watches the inferior stumbling powers. Upon her silent heights she was aware of a calm presence throned above her brows, who saw the goal and chose each fateful curve. It used the body for its pedestal, the eyes that wandered where its searchlight fires, the hands that held the reins, its living tools. All was a working of an ancient plan, a way proposed by an unerring guide. Across white noons and glowing afternoons, she met with nature and with human forms, and listened to the voices of the world. Driven from within, she followed her long road. mute in the luminous cavern of her heart, like a bird, like a bright cloud through the resplendent day.
Thank you.
At the fast apart, and path ran for through peopled tract, admitted to lion eye of states, and the theatres of the low act of man. Her carven chariot with its fret wheels treated through clamorous marts and the sentinel towers, past figured gates and high dream sculptured fronts, and gardens hung in the sapphire of the skies, pillared assembly halls with armored guards, small fans where one calm image watched man's life, and the temples even as if by excellent gods, to imitate their lost eternity, often from gilded dusk of argent down, where jewel lamps flickered on frescoed walls, and the stone lattice starred moonlight boats, half cautious of the third listening night. Dimly, she is glided between banks of sleep, rest in the slumbering palace of kings.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Nitya.
Hamlet and village saw the fate wane pass. Homes of a life bent to the soil it ploughs for sustenance of its short and passing days, that, transient, keep their old repeated course, unchanging in the circle of a sky, which alters not above our mortal toil. Away from this thinking creature's burdened hours, to free and griefless spaces now she turned, not yet perturbed by human joys and fears. Here was the childhood of primeval earth. Here timeless musings, large and glad and still, men had forborne as yet to fill with cares, imperial acres of the eternal sower, and wind-stirred grasslands winking in the sun, or mid green musing of woods and rough-browed hills, in the groves murmurous, bee air humming wild, or past the long lapsing voice of silver floods, like a swift hope journeying among its dreams, hasten the chariot of the golden bride.
Thank you.
Out of the world's immense unhuman past, track memories and ageless remnants came, domains of light, and effort to an antique calm, listen to the unaccustomed sound of hooves, and large immune entangled silences absorbed her into emerald secrecy, and slow hushed wizard nets of fiery bloom environ with their colored snare her wheels. The strong importunate feet of time fell soft along these lonely ways, his tightened pace, forgotten and his stark and ruinous surrounds. The inner ear that listens to solitude leaning self-wrapped, unboundedly could hear the rhythm of the intenser, wordless thought that gathers in the silence behind life, and the slow, sweet, inarticulate voice of earth. In the great passion of her sun-kissed trance, ascending with its yearning undertone.
Thank you. Crystal.
Afar from the brute noise of clamorous needs, the quieted, all-seeking mind could feel, at rest from its blind outwardness of will, the unwearied clasp of her mute, patient love, and know for a soul the mother of our forms. This spirit stumbling in the fields of sense, this creature bruised in the mortar of the days, could find in her broad spaces of release. Not yet was a world all occupied by care. The bosom of her mother kept for us still her austere regions and her musing depths, her impersonal reaches lonely and inspired, and the mightinesses of her rapture haunts. Muse-lipped, she nursed her symbol mysteries, and guarded for her pure-eyed sacraments the valley clefts between her breasts of joy, her mountain altars for the fires of dawn, and nuptial beaches where the ocean couched, and huge chanting of her proper woods.
Thank you.
Fields had she of her solitary mirth, plains hushed and happy in the embrace of light, alone with the cry of birds and hue of flowers, and wildernesses of wonder lit by her moons, and gray seer evenings kindling with the stars, and dim movement in the night's infinitude, august, exulting in her Maker's eye. She felt her nearness to him in earth's breast, conversed still with the light behind the veil, still continued with eternity beyond, communed with eternity beyond. A few and fit inhabitants she called to share the glad communion of her peace. The breath, the summit were their natural home. The strong king sages from their labor done, freed from the warrior tension of their task, came to her serene sessions in these wilds. The strife was over, the respite lay in front. Happy they lived with birds and beasts and flowers, and sunlight and the rustle of the leaves, and heard the wild winds wandering in the night, mused with the stars in their mute, constant ranks, and lodged in the mornings as in azure tents, and with the glory of the noons were one.
Thank you.
Some deeper plunged, from life's external clasp, beckoned into a fiery privacy in the soul's unprofaned, star-wide recess. They sojourned with an ever-living bliss. A voice profound in the ecstasy and the hush they heard, beheld an all-revealing light. All time-made difference they overcame. The world was fibered with their own heartstrings, close drawn to the heart that beats in every breast. They reached the one self in all through boundless love. Attuned to silence and to the world rhyme, they loosened the knot of the imprisoning mind. Achieved was the wide, untroubled witness gaze. Unsealed was nature's great spiritual eye. To the height of heights rose now their daily climb. Truth leaned to them from her supernal realm. Above them blazed eternity's mystic suns. Nameless, the austere ascetics without home, abandoning speech and motion and desire, aloof from creatures sad, absorbed, alone, immaculate in tranquil heights of self, on concentration's luminous voiceless peaks, world naked hermits with their matted hair, immobile as the passionless great hills, around them grouped like thoughts of some vast mood, awaiting the infinite's behest to end. The seers attuned to the universal will, content in him who smiles behind earth's forms, abode ungrieved by their insistent days.
Thank you. I'll read this next passage. About them, like green trees girdling a hill, young grave disciples fashioned by their touch, trained to the simple act and conscious word, greatened within and grew to meet their heights. Far wandering seekers on the Eternal's path, brought to these quiet founts their spirit's thirst, and spent the treasure of a silent hour, bathed in the purity of the mild gaze that, uninsistent, ruled them from its peace, and by its influence found the ways of calm. The infants of the monarchy of the worlds, the heroic leaders of a coming time, king children nurtured in that spacious air, like lions gamboling in sky and sun, received half-consciously their godlike stamp. Formed in the type of the high thoughts they sang, they learned the wide magnificence of mood that makes us comrades of the cosmic urge, no longer chained to their small, separate selves, plastic and firm beneath the eternal hand, met nature with a bold and friendly clasp, and served in her the power that shapes her works. Suresh, would you like to?
One soul was and free from Auroville born, God like air, continent of warm sunshine, in wide equality, incredible joy. This sage breathed for God's delight in things, assisting the slow entire of the gods,
sowing in young minds immortal thoughts they lived, taught the great truth to which man's race must rise, or open the gates of freedom to a few, imparting to our struggling world of light the breath like spirits from time's due yoke released, cometh and vessels of the cosmic force, using a natural mastery like the suns. Their speech, their silence was a help to earth, a magic happiness followed from their touch. Oneness was surgeon in that sylvan peace, the wild beast joined in friendship with its prey, pursuing the otter and the strip to case the love that follows from the one mother's breast, held with their hearts the heart and wondered world.
Thank you. Sudan.
Others escape from the confines of thought to where mind's motionless sleeps waiting light's birth, and came back quivering with a nameless force, drunk with a wine of lightning in their cells. Intuitive knowledge leaping into peace, sees vibrant, kindling with the inspired word, hearing the subtle voice that clothes the heavens, carrying the splendor that has lit the suns. They sang infinity's names and deathless powers, in meters that reflect the moving worlds, sight, sound, wave breaking from the soul's great deeps, some lost to the persons and his stripe of thought, in a motionless oceans of impersonal power, sat mighty visions with the infinite's light, or comrades of the everlasting will, surveyed the plan of past and future time, some wings like birds out of the cosmic sea, and vanished into a bright and featureless vast. Some silent watched the universal dance, or helped the worlds by world's indifference. Some watched no more, merged in a lonely self, absorbed in the trance from which no soul returns. All the occult world's line forever closed, the chain of birth and person cast away. Some uncompanioned reached the ineffable.
Thank you. Nara.
As floats a sunbeam through a shady place, the golden virgin in her caravan car came gliding among the meditation seats. Often in twilight, mid returning troops of cattle thickening with their dust the shades, when the loud day had slipped below the verge, arriving in a peaceful hermit grove, she rested, drawing round her like a cloak, a spirit of patient muse and potent pair. Or near to a lion's river, tawny mane, and trees that worshipped on a praying shore, a domed and templed air's serene repose beckoned to her hurrying wheels to stay their speed. In the solemnity of a space that seemed a mind remembering ancient silences, where to the heart great bygone voices called, and the large liberty of brooding seers had left a long impress of their souls seen, awake in candid dawn or darkness mooned. To the still touch inclined the daughter of flame, drank in hushed splendor between tranquil lids, and felt the kinship of eternal calm.
Thank you.
But more book in reminding her of her caste, and from low rustic coach or mate she rose, and went impelled on her unfinished way, and followed the fateful orbit of her life, like a desire that questions silent gods, then passes star-like to some great beyond. Thence to great solitary tract she came, where man was a passer-by towards human chance. All soul in nature's vastness strove to live, and called for help to unsolid invisible powers, overwhelmed by the immensity of his world, and unaware of his own infinity. The heart multiplied to her a changing brew, and called her with a far and nameless voice. The mountains in their enjoyed solitude, the forest with their multitudinous chant, disclosed to her the masked divinity's doors.
Thank you.
On dreaming plains, an indolent expanse, the deathbed of a pale, enchanted eve, under the glamour of a sunken sky, impassive she lay, as at an age's end, or crossed an eager pack of huddled hills, lifting their heads to hunt a lair-like sky, or travelled in a strange and empty land, where desolate summits camped in a weird heaven, mute sentinels beneath a drifting moon, or wandered in some lone, tremendous wood, ringing forever with a cricket's cry, or followed a long, glistening serpent road through fields and pastures lapped in moveless light, or reached the wild beauty of a desert space, where never plough was driven, nor herd had grazed, and slumbered upon stripped and thirsty sands, amid the savage wild beast night's appeal. Still unaccomplished was the fateful quest. Still she found not the one predestined face, for which she sought amid the sons of men. A grandiose silence wrapped the regal day. The months had fed the passion of the sun, and now his burning breath assailed the soil. The tiger heats prowled through the fainting earth. All was licked up as by a lolling tongue. The spring winds failed. The sky was set like bronze. End of that.
Thank you. So now we go back to the beginning of the canto, and Margaret can begin.
Canto 4, The Quest. The world ways opened before Savitri. At first, a strangest of new brilliant scenes peopled her mind and kept her body's gaze. But as she moved across the changing earth, a deeper consciousness welled up in her. a citizen of many scenes and climes, each soil and country it had made its home. It took all clans and peoples for her own, till the whole destiny of mankind was hers. These unfamiliar spaces on her way were known and neighbors to a sense within. Landscapes recurred like lost forgotten fields, cities and rivers and plains her vision claimed like slow recurring memories in front. The stars at night were her past brilliant friends. The winds murmured to her of ancient things, and she met nameless comrades loved by her once. All was a part of old forgotten selves. Vaguely or with a flash of sudden hints, her acts recalled a line of bygone power. Even her motion's purpose was not new. Traveler on a prefigured high event, she seemed to her remembering witness soul, to trace again a journey often made.
Thank you. So we pause there for a minute. We'll just pause for a few minutes. In the last canto, King Aswapati had revealed to Savitri, and in an inspired moment, that she should go out into the world to find her mate, that there was another soul linked with hers that she should find. And this canto begins, or at the end of the last canto, it says, "Delight had fled to search the spacious world." So during the night after she was told this, she left to explore the world. And here there's almost no transition. In the beginning, the world ways opened before Savitri, and she's on her journey, we see. At first, a strangeness of new brilliant scenes peopled her mind and kept her body's gaze. But as she moved across the changing earth, a deeper consciousness welled up in her. And this is interesting because it seems to be perhaps her psychic being is coming forward, because it's something within her that is eternal, that has seen these places before through which she's traveling. Probably in her present life, she's never moved through these areas, but somehow they seem familiar to her. A citizen of many scenes and climes, each soil and country it had made its home. So it's referring to Savitri's soul in her past lives. It took all clans and peoples for her own, till the whole destiny of mankind was hers. It's as if perhaps she had lived among these different peoples that she encounters in previous lives. These unfamiliar spaces on her way were known, and neighbors to a sense within. She senses that she knows these places. Landscapes recurred like lost, forgotten fields. Cities and rivers and plains, her vision claimed, like slow recurring memories in front. It's as if these are coming back to her in memories in her soul. Even the stars at night were her past brilliant friends. The winds murmured to her of ancient things. She has the sense of eternity and having lived in these places long ago. All was a part of old forgotten selves. Vaguely or with a flash of sudden hints, her acts recalled a line of bygone power. So sometimes she may have vague memories, or she may suddenly have a flash of a memory, of a hint of something that reminds her of a previous life, a previous experience. Her acts recalled a line of bygone power. Sri Aurobindo speaks of lines of karma, lines of development of the soul through a series of lives, that we may develop certain aspects of our being across a number of different lives. So she's recalling a line of development, of power. And then even her motion's purpose was not new. Even this mission on which she has gone out, traveler to a prefigured high event, even that seemed to be something that she recalled or had done in the past. So we continue. Oh, there's a question.
I want to point out that is Savitri's remembering and what she's seeing. But for me, it comes also that like how we see from this that the stars that bright on the different that we and I traveled a lot when I was younger, and there is something not totally conscious, but something, yes, behind it. So when we have the impulse to travel around to many countries, it's maybe something also not so conscious, but a push from the soul.
Yeah, we all may have some experiences like this, some vague sense of a memory of a place or an atmosphere. or people. Yeah, the mother had many experiences of past lives, of specific incidents that had occurred in previous lives, even when she had gone to a particular place where that had happened. Okay, we'll continue. Jean?
A guidance turned the dumb revolving wheels, and in the eager body of their speed, the dim-masked, hooded Godheads rode, who move, assigned to man immutably from his birth, receivers of the inner and outer law, at once the agents of his Spirit's will, and witnesses and executors of his fate. Inexorably faithful to their task, they hold his nature's sequence in their guard, carrying the unbroken thread old lives have spun. Attendance on his destiny's measured walk, leading to joys he has won and pains he has called. Even in his casual steps, they intervene. Nothing we think or do is void or vain. Each is an energy loosed and holds its course. The shadowy keepers of our deathless past have made our fate the child of our own acts, and from the furrows labored by our will, we reap the fruit of our forgotten deeds.
Thank you. Let's pause there. This is a very interesting passage, and I don't know that I've seen this explained in this way in other writings of Sri Aurobindo and Mother. I think now perhaps I'll look a little more carefully for it, but in his prose writings about rebirth and karma, he doesn't often, or I don't remember him speaking of these dim-masked, hooded Godheads, these beings or kind of guardians of our life that keep the sequence of our karma intact, that are guiding us to fulfill these lines of karma in which we've come to further. So he begins, a guidance turned the dumb revolving wheels. These are also the wheels of her chariot, but also the wheels of fate, I think, in general. And in the eager body of their speed, the dim-masked, hooded Godheads rode, who move, assigned to man, immutably from his birth, They're as if assigned to each of us to lead us in our lives. Receivers of the inner and outer law, at once the agents of His Spirit's will and witnesses and executors of His fate. So they are guiding, leading us according to our Spirit's will, perhaps our psychic being or that Jivatman's, that central being's will, our individual spirit, divinity, which guides our sequence of lives and our evolution through many lives. So they are the agents of the Spirit's will and the witnesses and executors of His fate. So they're watching this fate unfold, but also executors, they're fulfilling, carrying it out. This will of our spirit, perhaps our psychic being. And inexorably faithful to their task, they hold His nature's sequence in their guard, carrying the unbroken thread old lives have spun. So always, when we act in a particular way, it has consequences for the future, sometimes in future lives. So that's this unbroken thread. Old lives have spun. There are these energies that continue, and they hold that sequence. Attendance on His destiny's measured walk, leading to joys He has won and pains He has called. So they lead us to these consequences of our previous actions. Even in His casual steps, they intervene. So they may move us in one direction or another, point us one way or another, urge us to do something we maybe hadn't even thought of doing. Nothing we think or do is void or vain. Each is an energy loosed and holds its course. So this is the idea of karma. Each action is an energy that's released and it follows. It moves ahead through the course of time, has its consequences, now or later. So these beings, the shadowy keepers of our deathless past, they're shadowy to us because we're not aware of them, have made our fate the child of our own acts. So our fate is the result of our own previous actions. And from the furrows labored by our will, furrows are like paths etched into the soil of the earth that a plow makes. So when we do actions, lines in which we tend to stay within, we tend to continue those same actions. And from the furrows labored by our will, we reap the fruit of our forgotten deeds. So also by the paths that we dig through our own efforts in life, our endeavors, our life tasks, those also are carried forward into the next lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so seem to be saying that if we can express our will directly to the divine, make it clear what we intend in our life, then it can have a stronger effect on our future. Well, we can take it in that way. It's a result of the past, but I have a sense that he's also talking about the future here, that whatever we do also, it has consequences, and we think, oh, it's just, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, we don't have that. Normally, we don't have a sense that there are these beings surrounding us, concerned with our actions, influencing us.
This karma theory at a lower level, I want to know. In some traditions, they say, like, same soul gives a reaction to your past actions. Or is it these so-called forces have made coincidence happen so you reap your past? So is the same soul or different soul? That's my question. The reaction to your past karma, looking at a good deed towards him, his soul gives a good deed to me or any other soul? That's my basic question. Because in some Hindu tradition, they say the same soul. That's why you come to a group of souls, like that's their belief. So I just wanted to clear maybe some more thought on that. And second question, that which supercomputer that make coincidences so that I have my reaction to my task?
Yeah, it's all very complex. So I think, in a sense, a lot of it has to do with the consequences of your own actions, right? That seems to be the main thing. But we are in a group of souls interacting with others, and others also, I'm sure, have effects on us. so we can be helped or hurt by others. And so that's also there. I don't know.
But what is so clear is that absolutely we all have many lives. So we have done a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot of things have happened. Then, in this life, we have, obviously here, many helpers or guides.
Yeah.
And he says absolutely nothing that we think or do. He's very no voice.
Yeah.
So that makes a pretty clear statement to me that we are in good hands.
We're in good hands. Well, I think that's true.
Good hands, but your actions makes your future fate. That's also basic ground rule.
That's because of the knowledge of this, the faith, my faith is grounded. And then it's not a question of belief anymore, in any theories or in karma. It's a matter of doing and being.
But there is.
It happens automatically. It's nature.
But I would just add that I think there's like this hierarchy of beings, right? So there is, let's say, our spirit, he talks about, the executors of our spirit's will. So there is kind of this long path in which our destiny lies, let's say. And so that eventually will be worked out, and the spirit is sure that it's going, pushed to one side or deflected from your main destiny for a period of time, maybe for a few lives, you don't know. And so there are these other forces that are also operating, that are not just your highest destiny.
But aren't those forces, not listening to us, not listening to the words or whatever, they don't have the power to throw you off unless you consent.
Well, that may be.
So that's where we have the possibility.
Yeah. That's free will. So these are big, complex issues. There's a lot of different forces at play, at work, and working things out. And it's not always a clear, straight line, I think. But eventually it's working the way it's supposed to.
And with action and reaction being equal, there is a counter to that also. Like if you go to a higher plane of existence, then that equality is not there. Even the less effect of the partner. That is also there.
Yeah, we can call a higher destiny down or something like that. So we may be caught at a certain level, but if we can connect ourselves with our true purpose or with a higher purpose, then that can supersede this other line of destiny in which we may be moving. I think that's what you're saying. So, okay, go ahead. Thy will be done. But so he goes into this whole issue of fate and karma here, in some sense, in this canto, in this short passage. Later, there's going to be, the book of fate, right? So we're going to go into it in great detail later. So, let's see. Shall we read one more? Who's next? Crystal? Are you next? Who's next? I'm not sure.
But since unseen the tree that bore this fruit, and we live in a present born from an unknown past, they seem but parts of a mechanic force to a mechanic mind tied by earth's laws. Yet are they instruments of a will supreme, watched by a still all-seeing eye above, a prescient architect of fate and chance, who builds our lives on a foreseen design, the meaning knows and consequence of each step, and watches the inferior stumbling powers. Upon her silent heights she was aware of a calm presence throned above her brows, who saw the goal and chose each fateful curve. It used the body for its pedestal. The eyes that wandered were its searchlight fires, the hands that held the reins its living tools. All was the working of an ancient plan, a way proposed by an unerring guide. Across white noons and glowing afternoons, she met with nature and with human forms, and listened to the voices of the world. Driven from within, she followed her long road, mute in the luminous cavern of her heart, like a bright cloud through the resplendent day.
Thank you. So he says, but since unseen the tree that bore this fruit, we don't see the past lives, remember the past lives, which are bearing their consequences in our present life, the fruit of those actions. And we live in a present born from an unknown past. They seem but parts of a mechanic force, to a mechanic mind tied by earth's laws. So it seems that we're just moving according to kind of an unconscious rhythm, circumstances lead this way or that, it's just by chance, because we don't see these mechanisms of karma working from the past. They seem just a mechanic force. There is a kind of mechanic force, and nature is kind of like that, but there is this combination of the soul living within nature. And so the soul is also important, and it's guiding our development in nature. Later he talks about this all-seeing eye above, the meaning knows and the consequence of each step, and watches the inferior stumbling powers. Well, those stumbling powers, I think, are these mechanical forces of nature in which we move and which affect us in some sense. But it is watching them and guiding the soul through them. So that's divine being, that will supreme, all-seeing eye above. It's an architect of fate and chance. So it even creates perhaps these circumstances that seem like chance, who builds our lives on a foreseen design. And the meaning knows and consequence of each step. So even these chance kind of elements that come into play in our lives are part of that, its plan, let's say. It's conscious of them, uses them. They're part of its architecture. But I think what's quite important and key is to become conscious of this divine presence and guidance in our life coming from our soul. And to the extent that we can do that, then we can move in its intended direction rather than getting moved this way or that by these unconscious forces of nature. We have both of these elements at play in our lives. So for her, this guidance from the divine above is there. It's working within her consciously. The eyes that wandered were its searchlight fires. The hands that held the reins, its living tools. So she's an instrument of this higher self. All was the working of an ancient plan, a way proposed by an unerring guide. And of course, she's moving through the countryside, the landscape, not really knowing which way to go, where to go. But somehow this force, this being is guiding her to her destiny, to her beloved Satyavan, whom she'll just, as if by chance, will encounter in the middle of this forest.
This last part is pretty good because she's driven from the king, even though she's holding the reins of the sun and the chariot. She is driven from the king,
Right.
but it's her heart. It's her heart that is the source of that energy. You got to do that. In the right direction, take the right turn.
Yeah. The psychic being centered behind the heart. Right. It's above and it's within. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, we stop there for today.
I don't understand the whole, but if you would, if you understand that, incredible, incredible.
The world ways opened before Savitri. A guidance turned the dumb revolving wheels, and in the eager body of their speed, the dim-masked hooded godheads rode, who move assigned to man immutably from his birth, receivers of the inner and outer law, at once the agents of his spirit's will and witnesses and executors of his fate.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.